So Mr. Paulo Sitolini, Senior Vice President and COO at Hayward Lumber, welcome to the WCLBMA Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you making time. I was wondering if I might be able to start with you, Paulo, with a somewhat offensive question. Would you be okay with that?
I'm okay with that. It's hard to offend me.
We're going to talk about about your background, which I find fascinating, and we'll kind of dig into that and kind of how that plays into your leadership style. But your first language was Portuguese, correct?
That is correct. I was born in Brazil, and I came to the U.S. when I was 19 years old as a foreign exchange student, not knowing a lick of English, and it was pretty painful.
So here's what I'm wondering. Here's kind of the somewhat offensive question. So you got like more than 500 million Spanish speakers on the globe. You got less than half of that, and most of them are in Brazil. Would you and your fellow Portuguese-speaking friends, would you guys be willing to, maybe over a generation or so, be willing to drop the Portuguese language as a whole and just adopt Spanish to make it easier for the rest of the world? Would you be open to that?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, that would not happen. They're very proud of their Portuguese and their heritage.
Well, I recently spent a couple days in Lisbon, and it was absolutely gorgeous. The only thing is when I travel, especially in Spain, and that was my first time to Portugal, I speak Spanish. So I love being able to speak Spanish. And if I'm reading Portuguese, I can pick up enough to kind of deduce more or less what's happening. Listening to it though, my wife's looking at me. She's like, "Are you understanding this?" And I'm like, "No." No, like I'm picking out like one out of every 50 words, and it's like a maybe. So, but anyway,
it's an interesting thing. People that don't speak other languages might not know this because it doesn't flow both ways. Portuguese people understand Spanish very easily. It's very easy to understand Spanish. But it doesn't go the other way. So if you're Spanish speaking, you cannot understand Portuguese, which is kind of interesting with French because it's hard to understand French, but French people understand Portuguese pretty well.
That's interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was my subtly offensive question. Yeah. I anticipated that response, but
you got to do a lot better than that to offend me.
Sure. Now, as for the other 200 million plus Portuguese speakers around the globe that will surely be listening to this podcast episode, I'll deal with that later. Well, there's this phrase we often hear in the lumber and building material industry, which was, I was born in the business. Most of the time when you hear that, it is somewhat figurative, meaning my parents were in the business, my father was in the business, my mother was, whatever. You, my friend, apparently, if my fact checking is correct, you were literally born in a lumberyard. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I take that to the next level. So my grandfather had a lumberyard, and my mom and my dad opened a lumberyard in Paraná. It was a state in Brazil. And our house was the office. It was inside of the lumberyard, inside the four walls. So I was literally born and raised in a lumberyard. Our backyard was the lumberyard. And my uncles still have lumberyards in Brazil. Wow. I grew up in lumberyards. I left trying to do something different. And here we are. End up in a lumberyard, got sawdust in the blood.
For sure. So maybe tell me about your childhood. I know what it's like. I mean, my introduction, we did not own a lumberyard. My father worked for one, and kind of right before my 15th birthday, that was my job for every summer and winter break, pretty much through college. What was it like for you growing up, and how soon did you participate and engage and help, or just get into kind of the operations of it?
No, at the time, mostly grew up in a lumberyard, right? So always playing around, always having fun, lots of logs, lots of interesting wood and interesting samples. My dad had lots of samples in the yard. And in Brazil, you don't have like pine forest, and it's very different the way the wood is harvested. You get a mixture of lots of different hardwoods, and they're beautiful and they're nice and they smell wonderful. So I always grew up with that around, and the sound of saws running, It was a lot of fun, but it was not what I wanted to do for a living, to be quite honest. And my oldest brother inherited the lumberyard, as is common in Brazil. And my dad says, you know what? You guys go figure something out for me and my other siblings. Go do something else, and which was good. I thought that was a great idea to diversify in a country that's very difficult and very volatile with business. So it was good to diversify, and I tried, but here I am, running a lumberyard, and I love it. I love every minute of it. I can't imagine doing anything else.
And tell me, how many siblings did you have?
So we're in 5. I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister.
All right. And where do you land among the 5?
I am the youngest male, so I'm the 4th, which means I can take a beating really, really good.
It's where you develop that thick skin.
It's like, bring it on. I got beat up all day long by 3 older brothers, and as soon as I touched the girl, I got beat up again. So it's all good.
Well, we might circle back to that here in a minute. Just in kind of your leadership style, there's something I want to talk to you about. But before I get to that, maybe talk to me about this decision to go into a foreign exchange program where you didn't know the language. What was happening in your life that made this an opportunity? Because in my mind, that would scare the hell out of me. And when I studied in Mexico, it was for 6 months. I'd been studying the language for, at that point, 7 years. And I felt, probably overly confident, which is an issue I have. But I was prepared. You, on the other hand, were like, we're doing this and no language skills. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
My trip up here was very interesting. But the whole thing that took action to come up here, I just knew I needed to change environment. I was a bit of a trouble kid in Brazil, and things were not going in the right direction, and I couldn't free myself from where I was, so to speak. And this opportunity just laid in my lap. It was unbelievable, because in my entire life, I said, why do I need to learn English? I'm never going to the U.S. I have no interest to go to the U.S. They don't want to learn Portuguese, so why do I want to learn English? And had a really bad attitude about it, in fact. But everything just fell into place. And I look back and it's unbelievable how things happen in your life for a reason. It's wow, it's impressive. But anyway, I had this opportunity and I jumped on it, and I had no idea. And the interesting thing is, I was the last to be placed. I got placed the day of the trip. So I never got to say goodbye to my parents, say goodbye to pack. I didn't pack my bags. I was like, you're not going. And next thing I know, my dad is waking me up at 3:00 in the morning, throwing me in the car. And at 5:00 that afternoon, I'm on a plane. And I never been on an airport. I never been in an airplane. I never been away from my parents for more than 5 days. I didn't know any English. And next thing I know, I'm in Miami airport with a lot of Hare Krishna people walking around me with ponytails and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was pretty interesting.
So you land in Miami, and what was your ultimate destination from there?
San Diego.
It was, okay.
So I flew to San Diego, which was a whole other story, because when I got to San Diego, the family that was supposed to pick me up was not there. So here I am standing on a closed airport. It's me and the janitor cleaning. The guy's cleaning the floor, and me sitting on my bags going, what do I do now? I'm 6,000 miles away from home. I haven't slept in 2 days, and I don't know a lick of English. What am I doing here? It was a good start. So I say that I went from being a 12-year-old man or boy to being a 35-year-old man in 24 hours.
So I'm sorry, I might have missed this. I was thinking you were 9. How old were you when this happened?
I was 19.
Oh, you were 19. Okay.
But mentally, I might as well be 12. I was
see.
A dummy. I can use the right word.
Yes.
So that's how. So I have the mentality of a 15-year-old, if you will. But by the time 24 hours had passed, I was like a 35-year-old man.
I can imagine. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. I remember, for better or worse, as does my wife, who knew me back when I was 19. When I was 19, yes, not thinking coherently. Decision-making process wasn't my strong suit there. I will say, if you polled like 1,000 Americans from across the country and you described the story that you had and you said, this 19-year-old is going to end up in some city with a janitor in the middle of nowhere, what city would be most ideal? I think San Diego would rise to the top. So like you got lucky there. Like, it was like Fargo in North Dakota. I'd be like, I mean, nothing against that, but I mean, you're going to be it'd be a different setting for sure.
But see, here's what's funny, because I wanted to go to somewhere where there's snow. I never seen snow in my life. I had no idea what snow was like. So I'm like, I don't want to go to San Diego. That's a lot like Brazil. I want to go somewhere, but here we are. And so happy I did.
Absolutely. So you had this line, and I'd like you to maybe expand on it a little bit. Mm-hmm. You said, I love learning, and not being able to speak has its advantages. I had to listen a lot more than speak. How was that experience of that, not having the language skills and being forced to listen and really process in a fast way? How has that shaped kind of who you are and kind of your leadership style now?
Yes. So that it forced me to learn to listen, right? I had to stop talking and listening because I didn't know what was going on. So I had to focus. It taught me to focus. It taught me to pay attention. It taught me to really listen to what people were saying. And obviously that helps me because I am curious about what other people think. I love learning. So I love getting different perspectives. I don't necessarily agree with everything I hear, of course, but I do listen and I do pay attention. And the other thing I think that helps me is with the difficulty in communication earlier on is when I have an idea, and I have lots of ideas, most of them bad, but I have lots of ideas, right? Like everybody else, right? I mean, sure. We have lots of ideas, and most of them are bad, So I really encourage people to one, make sure they understood my idea, and two, that the idea is any good, right? Because there are many bad ones, and you can get hurt really bad if people just follow, right? Because by position alone, people tend to do what you tell them to do, or you just spitballing, or you just having an idea, and the person thinking that's what Paulo wants done, and I'm like, no, we're just exchanging ideas. I wanted your opinion. So it helped me a lot, I think, in my leadership style.
You mentioned curiosity, and I think amongst leaders who are learners, who are curious about themselves, self-understanding, curious about other people, curious about different domains and those things. Is curiosity something that corporations, teams, companies like Hayward can teach? Or is there a way that you can construct a roster that maybe just has more people that are curious? Or is that really just goes back to that selection process? You got to find out if they're curious to begin with because it's kind of hardwired. What do you think?
It's hard to tell. I think the people that I like to surround myself with are curious. I don't want people that are complacent. I don't want people that are happy with good enough, right? Good is the enemy of great, right? We all heard about that. We all know about that. And I really take that to heart. I'm never content. I'm never happy with where we are today. I think there's always room for improvement. And if you're not curious, you're not trying hard enough, right? You're not doing something. And one of my favorite sayings is always make new mistakes, mm-hmm. right? If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. And if you're making the same mistakes, well, then you're just a dummy, right? So we need to keep pushing each other. Yeah. And I like people that are around me that are curious, that are asking questions, that are coming with ideas, that are coming with thoughts, and that we talk. And often that got confused from people outside of organization. They say, oh, that little toxic organization, because we're very lively. I'm a very emotional person. I guess the Latin blood in me is still there. But I think it's healthy. I think it's good. And if you surround yourself with the right people that understand what we're trying to do, that is for the betterment of the company, you do much better that way.
It's a really interesting kind of concept or I think distinction in that how leaders encourage debate, encourage exchange of ideas, encourage challenging each other, also to be candid. Hey, that's a bad idea. Let me tell you why. And not having people feel they're being attacked personally. But I do think there's a thin line between this lively exchange of ideas and kind of a toxic culture. Is there any sort of advice or principles that you might have for anybody listening who's saying, well, you're talking about that, Paulo, and I'm thinking about our team. We've had a few meetings recently or a few exchanges with a few, whether it's leaders or anyone on our team, that would probably veer more into the toxic territory than just lively. Is there any way that you might be able to coach them or share advice on how you can have this lively debate, but really make sure it doesn't descend into toxicity?
Right. I think it can descend in toxicity if you get personal, right? So first thing is never get personal. And second thing is really listening and understanding that you don't have all the answers, right? And if somebody comes up with a good idea, you need to, accept a good idea and take it. You can't have pride. If it's always your way in the end of the day and you get into arguments and you always win, well, then what's the point of the argument? Just make the call, right? Because otherwise you will create that toxicity and then everybody will shut up and just do whatever you want, which is probably the worst part of it, right? Because God help me, if they do everything I wanted to do, might be in some terrible place. Like I said, I got many ideas, but most of them are bad, right? That's how it is. So you gotta take that pride and put it aside and really look for the best ideas.
Do you have a personal idea filtering mechanism within your own mind before you share it? Or is that filtering process something that you've been noodling on and you just kind of lay out and say, hey, I just want this open exchange of ideas. Here's some ideas. What do you guys think? Or is there something a little bit more structured internally that you do? Because I'm like you, like the idea generation is not the problem. And in some cases, There's too many ideas cluttering my own mind from saying, let's keep it simple here. Let's take one step in front of the other. And sometimes I know these ideas, as exciting as they might be to me, sometimes overwhelm my team. That's just like, I don't know, you had an idea 3 days ago and you had one 5 days ago. So just curious, how do you work through that own kind of filtering system yourself?
So I think the way I think it's a little different. There's strategy and direction, and then there's idea for improvement, right? We have a problem on a counter. Hey guys, what if we do this and that and this, right? And then just throw ideas. Or what if we try hiring a person from this area or that area and target this section? And then there's the more strategic idea. The strategic ideas I think about a lot. I spend lots of time on before I present. And we try to minimize that because that was what I think is toxic for companies, because people got ideas and today is this and then tomorrow is that, and people keep moving direction, and you have to stay consistent. You can't go after the new shiny object, right? You got to stay focused. And I think that's something that we do really well at Hayward Lumber. We pick a strategy, we stay with the strategy, and our strategy is directionally correct, right? We know where we want to go, not the strategy, but the action, right? We take action and we're very methodical, and we do not divert. We course correct, but we don't change the strategy. And the strategy is most of the time is very simple. Is like my friends Peter and John Ganao said, is doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. Yeah. Right. I love that. I've always had that in my top pocket once I've heard it. And that's what we try to do. That's mostly our strategy, is just doing that correctly. But the ideas that I have is for improvement, for continuous improvement. That's the ones that I have a lot of. What if we do this, or that to continuous improvement? Is that 2% improvement? How do we improve by 2%? How do we improve it? Those ideas are the ones that flow, that I throw out there. And I throw out there truly as an idea, not a suggestion. It's like, guys, have you thought of this? Give it some thought about that, because I want them to come back, right? Because I think the people that do the work knows best. I've been in that position. I started in receiving in with my other company. I've worked on my way to senior VP, as you mentioned, but I've held every job in a company. So I know when I was in that position, and I would have managers tell me something, and like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, right? So I remember that, and I don't want to be that guy, right? So I throw suggestions because I also remember how I did and things I wanted to do in that position, but I want them to come back with the idea, or because then there's the buy-in too, right? Because they developed the idea, they grew the idea, they raised that. So strategically, though, we do not deviate. We are religious about staying the course.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is, from a strategy standpoint, like how we're going about our goals, we're really consistent with. However, on the tactical fronts, the little things, how we tweak around the edges and make minor improvements and 1% here, and constantly, probably that continuous improvement, really flexible with. Right? Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. I say that to my guys all the time. We can strategize until the cows come home and not get anything done. It's like, man, we know what the final objective is. Just start working on it, right? So if you think of in a quadrant, and you want to go northwest, well, you might go more towards the north and then more towards west, but you're working on that quadrant, right? And you course correct. There is no straight line to a strategy because things happen, right? All day long, things happen in our business, and you got to be able to course correct, and you got to understand, because people get frustrated because they think they have to have a perfect strategy and they have to execute perfectly, and that will never happen. At least I've been doing this for over 30 years, and it's just not happening. Mm-hmm. It's not how it's done.
You brought up something that I hadn't thought about it in this kind of situation, but you kind of referred to kind of the position power, which is when you have someone who has the title, who comes in and says, hey, what do you think of that? Or what do you think of that? Very quickly, you might be saying, hey, here's something to think about, but you guys, I trust you guys, run your business like you guys see fit. I trust you. What they hear is Paulo came and said, he wants us to change how we do this. I've got a new book, and actually we're going to be delivering copies for free to the attendees to the WCLBMA convention in San Diego in October on negotiation. And this idea of position power negotiation is a really important tactic where, I don't know, somebody's kind of pressing me for a price increase or something like that. It's helpful if I can say, listen, I got to run this by my leader, Paulo, to give me some distance and some space. What you're referring to is this position power as a leader, where I got to be really careful on how I frame these suggestions. I can tell you, as I mentioned kind of earlier, I've been kind of struggling with this, where there's these ideas and then our team runs with it. I'm like, oh, that idea? I mean, that just flew off the top of my head. I apologize for opening my mouth, but I'm like, I didn't mean for you to do it. And my team's looking at me like, well, you said you like this idea and wanted to explore it. I'm like, well, so I started backtracking. Right. For folks that maybe like me are kind of struggling with that at the moment, what have you learned on how to frame that in a way that facilitates debate, but also they don't immediately take these ideas that come out as decrees on what to do next?
The only way I found out to do it is to be very, very specific. Okay. Because I thought it was, and that comes at that listening thing again, right? Because I learned early on in one of my first management positions, which was good because, again, that paying attention, right? Because I would say something and it was done, and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. What are you guys doing? Oh, you said you wanted, no, it was an idea, Yeah. So as I say things now, I am very clear about, we're not doing this. This is an idea. I want to hear your opinion. I mean, it sounds a little silly and crazy, but I have to do it because, the position alone, people tend to do what you ask, right? And it's that clarity, and it helped me because a lot of it is, I said, hey, I still once in a while make English mistakes, right? More often than I care to admit. So I used that. I said, hey, I'm struggling here. I'm not sure I'm putting the words here. So let's not do this. We're just talking about it. We're just spitballing right now. So
yeah, well, English is my first language, and I feel like obviously the words that are coming out of my mouth aren't clearly articulated, or at least they're not getting the right result. So yeah, I mean, that is, I think that's an advantage you've got, right? That's kind of like, in theory, it's a negativity, but you're using that to say, listen, hey, I just want to make sure you and I, right, we truly understand each other, and just, hey, give it a second thought here. I think that's smart. Tell me a little bit about where the bridge is between kind of your love of learning, meeting new people, hearing new ideas, and your willingness to join the board of the WCLBMA, because you're running a business. You guys are growing. You got a lot of different things going on. You got a lot of employees, and yet you are carving out time to really help drive the whole, I won't say industry, but right, the regional industry forward through the association. How did you come to that decision? And maybe what are some of the reasons you feel passionate about the WCLBMA?
Yeah, I decided to join because once there was an opening, right, and my name came up, and I jumped on it because, and I've been part of many organizations in the past, and every one of those organizations I learned a ton, right? I think you have to get out of your bubble. I think you have to explore. You have to talk to people. I love, like you said, I love interacting with people. I love listening to new ideas. I get ideas for new books to read. I get articles. We go into different conversations, sometimes about business, sometimes about life. I truly enjoy that. And I think there's a huge value for our company to do that. I think I often get more than I give, which I feel a little, bad. But you have to participate, right? I make sure I'm very active on the board. I speak a lot, or I try to speak a lot when I have something to say, not for the sake of just talking. But I think that exchange of ideas is super helpful. When I come back, I come refreshed. I come with different set of eyes, with different thoughts, and it makes it easy for me to pick up the phone and call my brother or my sister that's running another company, and say, how are you guys navigating through this, right? How are you doing this? And I think the part with the West Coast Lumber and Building Material Association that I want to be a part of is to provide a clearer message to our membership. I think one of the things that I mentioned in our last meetings, information is everywhere. You Google anything, right? I got newsletters daily bombarding my. I don't even know. I mean, most of them I just delete. I had the magazines now come through email, right? It's just a complete bombardment. What I want to bring is not just the information, is the knowledge. Like, tell me what I need to know in 3 bullet points and go, because I don't have the time. You come in with this big long article, I just roll my eyes and delete. I had one of our Central Coast associations here just send an article, and it was something really important, and there was acronyms on top of codes and legislations. And I read the whole thing because I was mad. I was seriously mad. And I read it because I wanted to understand what they're trying to say. So I couldn't understand. I read the whole article, couldn't understand. So I Googled the acronyms. I Googled all the codes. I went deep. Turns out it was something very important that our customers need to know. It's about water rights, and it was going to shut down several of the permits. So several people was going to put their permits on hold. Wow. So I asked my management team on the next meeting if they knew what the article was. Well, nobody had read. Of course, nobody read. And then I told them what it is. And I think that's what associations make errors, is they're just pushing. Oh, I got this, and I push it. Don't do that. Take this, boil that 4-page article into 3 bullet points. Here's what you need to know, Mr. Customer, right? Because there are customers or members are customers. Here's what you need to know. Go do your business, right? That's what I'm trying to work on, or with the team. We got a great board. They are very knowledgeable. They're very involved. One of the most involved and committed boards I've been on. So it's exciting. There's a lot of new and exciting things coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think the WCLBMA, I think, is increasingly becoming kind of a model for that. But instead of just, hey, we're picking this up and there's information, it's on Instagram, it's on LinkedIn, it's in the newsletter, and we're just chucking stuff, having more like a museum mindset. When you go to a museum, they don't say, I'm glad you're here, Paulo. In 50,000 square feet, we have 184,000 pieces of art. What do? They curate a collection and say, this, on this one wall with a ton of white space, there's this one statue, and this is why you should care, right? And I think that of just distilling it down to its essence so we can move. There's always more we can dig into. Like you can always Google it to dig deeper, right?
Right.
Cool.
Correct.
Well, maybe let's close out with, guaranteed we have some people who are listening to you that are like, no, totally right. We got to get out of our bubble. We need new ideas. I love that word explore. We need to explore new ideas and talk to new people, right? And we have this event coming up mid-October. It's going to be at the Hard Rock Hotel. We have an incredible keynote speaker. His name's Rocky Blyer, only human in history to have 4 Super Bowl rings, as well as serve in the military and get a Purple Star and a Bronze Star. So he's going to be there. For people that are thinking, I know, I hear you guys, but Paulo, I'm really busy here. I got a busy location. I got a lot of people. How might you encourage them to think differently about getting out of their bubble and joining us in San Diego in October for that event?
I think it's, Rocky is I can't wait to listen to him. What a life. What a amazing individual. So to me, it is every time I go to one of those things, I have the same thought, right? Like, oh my God, it's expensive. It's time consuming. Am I going to get anything out of it? But every time I go, I leave those places going, man, that was exciting. That was great. God, I got a ton of notes. Mm-hmm. I got great ideas. I met new friends. I can call people now that I didn't know, right? And somebody on the board, this is not my idea. Somebody said this. You go to a lot of these events, and it's almost like going to class, going to school. Mm-hmm. A single class, you might not get a whole lot, but when you stack them all, right, and all your years going through university, for instance, right, that's what makes the grade, right? That's what teaches you, right? That's where you get it. It's a little piece here and a little piece there, and you start putting the puzzle together. And today you just say hi to a person, but tomorrow you cross them. It's a small industry. Mm-hmm. We are a very, very small industry. I had situations where employees apply here, and it's from another company, and they say, hey, how's this person, right? Because I can pick up the phone and call that person because I met him at the West Coast Lumber and Building Material Association conference. And they say, oh, this is a great employee. He's just moving because, you had a family situation. Grab him quickly. Okay, great. What a great information, right? So I think there's a lot of benefits. You will learn a lot. You get to work on the business a little bit, and you get to hear some amazing inspirational speakers. I think everybody will enjoy.
That's such a great point, because I think so many people have had that where it is a small industry. We do have people move. They migrate from point A to point B. They find a place. What is the value of being able to pick up the phone and saying, hey, this resume came in. They used to work for you. And they're like, that person's amazing. We wish they stayed here. You should grab them immediately. And you do. Let's stop right there, understanding how much time and money we invest in attracting and developing new people. That one phone call would take care of 20 WCLBMA conventions for you, right? If they stay with you for a few years. So I think a lot of people have experienced that. So I appreciate you mentioning that. So just to clarify for any of the listeners there, October 18th to the 20th in San Diego. It's the annual WCLBMA convention. I'll be there. One of the recent episodes we did was with Craig Webb. So he's going to be there as well. We talked about artificial intelligence. And maybe just to close us out, Paulo, and again, thank you for your time. Maybe give us a little hint as to what Mr. Bill Hayward is going to be talking about, because he is extremely passionate and knowledgeable on many areas, but specifically one he's going to be talking about when we're together in San Diego.
Yeah, so absolutely right. Bill is very exciting. He's very knowledgeable. When he finds his passion, he digs deep into it. Right. He's the first person that I knew that got involved in the green movement and talk about green building. In 2001, when I was interviewed, he asked me about green building, and I was, like, what are you talking about?
What?
And he moved on from green building to indoor air quality because we start making this home so tight because of energy efficiency, right? So we start making this home so tight and everything. And then the indoor air quality became very toxic, and it's a problem, right? It is a problem today. We still need to resolve. And so that's what he is embarked on over 10 years ago now. He's been talking about this. He's one of the leading experts in the country. He is deeply involved. There's a couple companies that addresses that. And that's what he's going to talk about, like the importance of indoor air quality and the importance of building correctly. And use all the technologies and being involved in continuous learning, right? That's what it's about.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to end. I appreciate your time. I really enjoyed hearing your story. Parts and pieces of that I knew, and I knew getting together with you would be easy and fun and insightful. So Paulo Sitolini of Hayward Lumber, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bradley. Have a good day.